Thank you, everyone who's sticking it through to the end. Thank you for the invitation to present here. As Iowa was coming out of the COVID crisis, they changed their employment laws. There was a concern that, realized concern, that older members of the former labor market were going to go into early retirement and not return to the labor force. And so we needed a pool of labor to carry out some basic jobs. And so Iowa lowered the legal working age to 16. Now, I want you to imagine that there was a company in Iowa, called Neverland Incorporated, that works on speedy ice cream delivery. And they recognize this change in Iowa law and see in it a low-cost opportunity to hire child drivers to deliver their ice cream to their customers. Now, I can imagine legislators raising concerns. They might wonder, how are we going to ensure that Neverland has law-following employees? Maybe these employees are going to be henchmen who will cut corners and drive faster, easily influenced by their employer, and people will get hurt. And to make matters worse, Iowa did not change the age of responsibility. And so we have 16-year-old drivers working for Neverland who are not, under the law, themselves responsible. Now, these legislators might consider different ways to respond. One would be to focus on the 16-year-old employees. Perhaps we could recalibrate centuries of law to deem 16-year-olds, minors, personally responsible for the crimes and torts that they commit. Or perhaps we could engineer new programs for training new drivers, making them better and safer. But I think this approach, both these approaches, would face some hurdles. Deeming 16-year-olds to be legally responsible would not make them responsible. They'd still be judgment-proof. It's not clear what it would mean to sue a 16-year-old given their legal protections. It's also not entirely clear how we would improve driver training and licensure. And even to the extent that we wanted to set higher standards or modify the standards, we'd have to worry about spillover implications of these standards for ordinary adult drivers. What I want to suggest is that there's an alternate strategy that the legislature could consider, and that focusing on the 16-year-old drivers risks diverting attention away from another important lever of influence that the law has over how these 16-year-olds would perform. I mean, of course, we want the 16-year-olds to drive safely, and the suggestion is that maybe the law can't accomplish that goal directly. At a minimum, doing it would be very complicated, interventionist, and produce uncertain results. There might be a more elegant, and I would suggest perhaps more effective approach, which is not to focus on the law-following employees, but to focus on Neverland, to hold it responsible, to force it to internalize the externalities of its 16-year-old drivers, and incentivize it to develop systems for hiring good drivers, training them, and monitoring them. So now I want to put Neverland aside, because we're not talking about law-following employees. We're talking here about law-following AI. We're wondering about corporations using, or other institutions, using AI. We're worried about noncompliance by AI systems and wondering about how to address it. And in the law-following AI paper, we have one type of proposal, which is to focus on the AI itself directly. Now, law-following AI, just to quote the statement of the thesis, the law should impose duties on agential AI employed in institutional contexts to follow the law. And I'd like to take a couple minutes to suggest that just like holding child drivers in Neverland Incorporated directly responsible, law-following AI will face a suite of challenges and uncertainties, both conceptual and practical. The first cluster of challenges surrounds the concept of duty. An essential element of the law-following AI proposal is that it should directly impose duties on AI agents. But just as imposing formally some kind of legal responsibility on 16-year-olds is unclear what it means, given that 16-year-olds can't be sanctioned, it's not clear what it would mean to impose a duty on a sanctionless artificial agent. You can't imprison them, you can't fine them. So we are contemplating the possibility of imposing a duty on AI that is not enforceable against AI. That's kind of one sort of, I think, thorny set of issues. Another one that I've written about in the past is the threat of AI rights. And I think that rights are the correlates of duties. And I find the prospect of AI rights troubling, because these will be rights against us, the human being. So it's pitting our interests against theirs and giving AI a claim to the upper hand. Now, in law following AI, we learn, or there's a proposition, that duty holding and rights holding statuses are severable. And I think that's right. There are examples in the paper of entities that have rights but no duties. The children, perhaps, in Neverland Incorporated would be an example. Children have rights, but they're not legally responsible. Now, the paper's thinner on examples of entities that have duties but no rights. And I think if we actually dig into what that might mean, it would be both an unwise and an unworkable proposal. So think about what it would mean to have an AI with duties but no rights. I could accuse an AI of violating its duty, and it would not have the right to defend itself. What does it mean for an AI to have a duty to drive safely without a right to be on the road? And so duties and rights are necessarily correlates with each other, and it's, I put it to you, conceptually impossible to imagine one coming without the other, duties to come without correlate rights. And then a third issue related to duties, as is acknowledged in the paper, many duties require, at least on their traditional conception, mental states. So it's really difficult to imagine what criminal responsibility means or fiduciary responsibility means without incorporating concepts of intent and knowledge. And the paper discusses various possibilities for attributing mental states to AI, and they acknowledge the difficulty of sorting between them, which would be superior. In the paper, they say, to reiterate, we're not confident that any one of these approaches to determining AI mental states is the best path forward. So at a minimum, we just have a really difficult issue that law following AI poses that we need to figure out some path to work through it. One thing which I think the paper doesn't spends inadequate attention on would be considering what the implications of diluting or weakening or hollowing out the concept of duty, the implications of doing that for AI that it would have on human beings. And so duty is a uniform concept that applies to AI and to us. To the extent we thin out the concept of duty for application to AI, do we thin it out its application to human beings as well? One worry about that would be that it undermines the kind of intuitive legitimacy that we might take our duties to have. In the paper, there's a discussion about Hart's internal point of view. If we cheapen the concept of duty, do we risk undermining the internal point of view, which is so important to law following among human beings? Okay, so those are issues around the concept of applying a duty to AI. The second cluster of issues that I'd like to draw attention to, and which has come up earlier in the previous panels, are around implementation. So here's a central feature of the view. Law following AI proposes that instead of relying solely on ex post legal sanctions, we should require AI agents to be designed to follow some set of laws. Now, as they say in the paper, nobody knows how to ensure that AI systems are intent aligned or value aligned. So we don't have that technology yet, but I think that's precisely what we'd need to have AI that follows the law. On any standard theory of legal interpretation, it requires attention to legislative intent and or social values in resolving what the meaning of the law is. So if we can't have a value-sensitive or intent-sensitive AI, we can't have or don't have the technology yet to have an AI that follows the law. The paper concludes, and because it offers, it's setting a template for a research agenda, we are uncertain about what kind of ex-ante requirements are warranted. Now, I think we can go on to say, even in the face of uncertainty, given that there will be, I think for a long while, persistent uncertainty about what the ex-ante requirement should be, we should be alive to the prospect that whatever requirements, if law following AI were implemented, the law might get it wrong. And I think it's not only that the law might get it wrong, I think the law is likely to get it wrong. I don't think that the institutional strength of legislators or regulators or judges is comparable to the expertise that we have in in this community, in the commercial community. And that's even putting aside concerns about industry capture. And so we have to think about the political realities of the legislators and the lawmakers who will be creating these standards. Even if we could create these standards, they take time. Even our fastest procedures, our regulatory procedures, take time because of the Administrative Procedures Act, and they will always be acting behind the curve. Now, the reason that this matters is that there are costs to getting it wrong. So if you regulate AI too much, you're going to tamp down on innovation. And if you regulate it too little, you're going to end up giving legal cover to AI harms. So just to kind of sum up some of the challenges that I see for law following AI, a mode of directly regulating whether or not AI follows law, I think it's unclear how to impose a duty on an AI agent. Duties bring rights, and I find the prospect of AI rights terrifying. I think there are uncertainties about how to extend basic concepts tied to duty to AI, like mental states. And I think there's a severe risk that lawmakers will bungle any ex-ante requirement. What I'd like to do instead is maybe suggest a pivot. Or not a pivot, maybe a reframing, a refocusing. Now, artificial intelligence, we're talking about artificial intelligence operating in an institution. That's what LFAI is talking about. That means the AI is operating in a social context. It is an embedded system. The AI doesn't act on its own. It's part of an institution that is acting in symbiosis with the AI. And I would suggest that it's arbitrary to portion off this part of a collective system for separate analysis. Now, we see this for humans too. This is not particular to AI. Human beings, just like AI, we act. We have individual traits that influence our behavior, but our individual traits don't determine our behavior. There's an interplay between our traits and the context in which we find ourselves that fix how we behave in any given context. We just call this situationism. So people behave very differently at home than they do in the workplace, than they do at school, all because these environments have different incentives, local cultures, systems, procedures, and architecture. Now, corporate law recognizes this fact about situationism for human beings, and this is part of why it exercises control over the context in which human beings operate. In this context, we're talking about employment, so we're talking about corporations. The very first Supreme Court case to recognize the possibility of corporate criminality, decided over 100 years ago, said that it was necessary to be able to regulate the context, to regulate corporations, because merely regulating individuals is insufficient to govern corporate conduct. That without the capacity to regulate the context as well, we would virtually take away the only means of effectually controlling the subject and correcting abuses. In the corporate context, individual liability is oftentimes impossible. Individual employees, adult employees, are a lot like Neverland's child drivers. They are judgment-proof. What's more, there's an obfuscating veil, evidentiary challenges to holding individuals in corporations responsible, because the corporation is a black box. And in any investigation, employees point in opposite directions. And so building a case that was required in the criminal context, where I do most of my work, building a case beyond a reasonable doubt against any individual oftentimes proves impossible. So the suggestion that I'd like to put on the table is that recognition that AI behavior is also contextually contingent. And instead of focusing on law following AI, we might consider tools that we have for regulating the socio-technical system within which AI is embedded. The socio-technical system in this case is an AI corporate complex. If you can figure out how to exercise the leverage of control over the corporation, then maybe we can make them make, use, and otherwise monitor law following AI. I think this shift in perspective brings with it some ready solutions to the conceptual and pragmatic problems that I just mentioned. Corporate law has spent centuries developing and evolving tools for ensuring, or as best as we can, that corporations have law-following employees. It uses the leverage of liability over corporations to ensure, as best as possible, that their employees follow the law. And the suggestion is that we might have parallel solutions available for law-following AI. This shift reframes the question about AI duties, rights, and action, mental states, all these kind of thorny conceptual issues that I mentioned just a moment ago, as questions that have already been resolved in corporate law, questions about corporate rights, duties, actions, and mental states. And as to implementation, it hands the design questions to those with the most expert and local knowledge about how to design law-following AI, which is to say, the corporations themselves. With respect to law-following employees, corporate law rarely tells corporations how to ensure that their employees follow the law. What institutional attributes will ensure compliance? There's a recognition that doing so would be foolish, given the diversity of business models, industries, needs of particular corporations. Rather, what corporate law does is it recognizes the local expertise and institutional capacity of the corporations themselves. It incentivizes corporations to develop whatever system will best ensure that its employees follow the law. Now, I think that the paper, Law Following AI, it's a critical start to an inquiry. It gives some reason for optimism about why we can and should have law-following AI. What I suggest is that maybe paradoxically, the law should not be focused on law-following AI. That shouldn't be its direct concern. It should instead regulate the socio-technical system within which law is embedded. So not be concerned with law-following AI, or law-following employees, or law-following directors or officers. In fact, maybe we should look at LFC, law-following corporations. Thank you.
Okay. Last night, Thomas wanted to improve his slides, and so with his sensibility, he added some on like lavender and sage. I went home and I made, and I did this in complete sobriety, some changes as well. With my American sensibilities, it was not quite so classy. If I could have fit monster trucks in here somehow, I probably would have. All right. This is, so my presentation is in a nutshell, what would Hayek do, right? And so a lot of you, I think, are just going to, like, already having gut reactions against this. So I'm trying to ease into it with some Danny DeVito so that we can still be friends after this. The value of an individual's wealth. So a lot of people are saying, what's the dangers of AI? The value of an individual's wealth is coming to depend on forces entirely outside himself and his own efforts. 100 of these entities would control the whole of American wealth. All of employment is going to depend on this. They've essentially made themselves a state unto themselves, and we're heading to a situation in which there's definitely going to be a plutocracy, right? So these quotes are not from modern day, but from 1932 about the American Telephone and Telegraph Company. The central thesis that I've been writing about for the last couple of years is essentially that corporate law and AI regulation, especially alignment, are basically the same thing. And while in AI, we've got to come up with solutions quickly because the tech is coming and it's adjusting, and we don't have 100 years of common law to adjust and refine over time, y'all can copy our homework because we've been doing this for centuries. All right, so that is kind of the basic idea. We've got these powerful, soulless entities that are coming for us. They've got more resources, they're smarter, they're all over the place. And how do we govern them, all right? The way corporate law has done this is with alignment to shareholders as owners and to society. So we break this into two parts. When we talk about alignment in AI, we often talk about just alignment. In corporate law, we talk about it in two different ways. It's alignment to the shareholders, that is like agency law, essentially. How do we make sure that all of agency law is just how do we get the managers to do what the shareholders would want or the corporation would want? And then alignment to society, and this is just the corporate purpose debate. So if you've heard the debates on whether corporations should maximize profits, that's been going on since 1932, that paper I referenced earlier. That's all that this is. So we've been studying these concepts of alignment for a long time. You corporate law scholars out there know every year there's 20 new papers on each of these. And then alignment by, the way that we do this is through the law. We have fiduciary duties owed by directors to shareholders and to the corporation, but we won't get into those details. And then also by power relationships. And this, I think, is underlooked, the way that power affects how corporations actually run. When we say, well, how do we run corporations? We say, well, they have fiduciary duties. No managers are actually afraid of fiduciary duties because everyone gets sued and you have insurance and you're never losing your yacht anyway. What you're afraid of is the power dynamic that the board will fire you if they're upset with you. And so it's the power dynamics that I think I want to focus on a little bit today, and specifically I want to focus on market forces, okay? Cool story, Grandpa, this is an AI conference. Yes, but end user alignment is owner alignment, societal alignment is corporate purpose. It's all corporate law, okay? Okay. So I think the law following AI is a fantastic start. We believe that in corporate law as well. You should obey the law. And then this kind of just says, okay, how can we go a little bit beyond that? I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but happy to talk with you later about it. Law can't quite get you there for the reasons that are up here. It's slow, it's outdated, you have lobbying, you have capture, you have all of these problems. And it doesn't, this is a key point, it doesn't actually remove the bad power that we're afraid of. It just changes the locus of control of that power from OpenAI, from Sam Altman, to a regulator somewhere. We haven't gotten rid of the power because we regulated it. We just stuck the gun in someone else's hands and we hope that they don't shoot, okay? So my claim is market mechanisms can improve societal alignment in some applications, offer superior solutions over regulation. I try to make that as modest as possible because I understand as soon as you say the word Hayek in front of a bunch of law professors, it's gonna be an uphill climb. But the idea is that we can use some of the ideas in just from free markets to create alignment. If you think about like free markets generally, right? Like the idea is I don't want to go to work today. Why do I go to work? Because they pay me, right? And so the price mechanism is a way in which we take end user or societal alignment and we merge it up with end user alignment, right? So what I want, right? What I want goes away and I do what society wants, which is reflected in the price of bread, right? If people really, really want bread, the price of bread goes up, more people will show up to do bread, even though they don't want to, right? Price mechanisms are a way in which we create alignment, okay? This slide is just saying that I am not trying to say that we should violate the law. So this is universe of possible actions, then there are some legal actions within that. This would be law following AI. I'd say we should take it to one step further and say, why don't we also consider what is profitable, just in market by looking at that price signal, because the price signal is, the price signals to some extent serve as an aggregation of supply constrained preferences. So if you want to know what society wants, you can say, well, what are we paying for each thing, right? Now, there are plenty of problems with that and we'll address those, and I expect that during the question and answer period, I'm going to get grilled on this. But as a rough estimate, you can kind of say, okay, well, what do people value? Well, they value what they'll pay for, okay? Competition is a discovery procedure. That's just basic Austrian economics that the purpose of markets is to create a price signal, or not the purpose, but markets create a price signal, and that price signal will dictate to you what is valuable in society, and that allows you to allocate resources in an efficient way so that there's not like mass starvation or lines. All right, market competition. It gives you these things. So there's two market mechanisms I'm going to discuss today. The price signal one I think is a little bit easier. The market competition is going to be a harder claim for me, so you should definitely shoot me down when we get to that. Okay, so the benefits of using the market is it decentralizes power, it's faster, you get emergent order that just kind of arises because you let a bunch of people do their own thing. It preserves pluralism. If you think my values are different than Sam Altman's values, then great, maybe we can both exist. Reduces coordination and collective action problems. It also pushes end user alignment towards societal alignment. As I mentioned, it's not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner. This is alignment, right? We put prices in place, we create alignment. It also works in bespoke goods and services when it's not so commoditized, where customers will maybe shop at one place rather than another because when you buy the shoes from here, they donate another set of shoes to poor kids or something like that, right? Corporations will do good things if the customers demand it, and that customer demand can drive a lot of the behavior as well. Okay, so the strongest case is I think in unintentional harm by misalignment. So the paperclip maximizer, right? Paperclip maximizer is like a fun story, but it doesn't work in any reasonable system if the system says, okay, well, what's the price of paperclips, right? As soon as the paperclip maximizer asks, what's the price of paperclips, it stops converting all of us into paperclips. It just goes and buys them and it trades with us, right? And so you can avoid these unintentional catastrophic misalignments just by having capitalism. There's Captain Capitalism. He's fighting on behalf of all of us. Okay. Now, there are some clear limitations to this. You're already all thinking these. You have market failures, you're going to have antitrust. And so how do we make sure that the price signal is actually useful and accurate? Tacit collusion may not be detectable. I don't know if you saw the paper like a week ago where they were just passing stuff back and forth between the two bots and it was able to communicate values, even without ever expressly stating their values, between one bot and the one that was distilling it. Agentic preferences for the model's developer may be one, where if OpenAI bots tend to prefer other OpenAI bots, you may end up with collusion without even intending it. And then network effects, where it's just like if If all of the farmers in the neighborhood are using the same surveillance technology to detect bugs and disease and blight, then I want to use that as well, because then I have data that's closer to my, so just network effects. Goods without a functioning market, you may not be able to do it. So when the bots start harvesting our organs, we may have a problem there. All right. Couple of problems. Externalities is just standard problems that you end up with markets. And then even if the price is an accurate reflection of a functioning economy, does it reflect social value? So efficient, just because it's efficient doesn't mean it's good, is essentially summing up this slide. All right, and it can also be skewed by wealth effects. Do you really want to have the wealthy, like if you say, well, we should adjust it, look at it price. Prices are going to be determined more by the wealthy than by the poor, and so you would have a bias towards benefiting the wealthy, if that makes sense. Counter argument there would just be you make more money as McDonald's than you do as the French Laundry, and so serving everyone is often more valuable. So prescription for this would just be we want to be pro-competition, not pro-business, not pro-OpenAI, not pro-incumbent. We want to be pro-competition. And so things that create more competition in the market will lead to these better outcomes. And then it's not exclusive of redistribution. So the weaker use case, so I think the first one about the paper clips is probably stronger. This one is that if you have a strong market, you might create pressure on developers to accede to consumer demand a little bit more. And consumer demand is a weak reflection of societal alignment. But yeah, competitive markets for AI products lead to greater diversity of products, lower costs, more alignment. Like there's a reason that you can buy, when I was a kid, I won this contest when I was working at the gas station. I won this like 32-inch TV. And everyone was like, wow, can I come over and watch your 32-inch? I don't even know if they sell 32-inch TVs anymore, right? But you can get like a 70-inch TV for like 20 bucks. I guess, I don't know what that is in meters, but it's large, several meters. When you let the market into things, it lowers prices, it increases quality, it has all types of beneficial effects. It has all types of negative effects as well. But we should look to see if we can harness those effects, because we get a ton of benefits from it, and it doesn't require coordination, it doesn't require us trusting Sam Altman. Perfect markets converge around consumer demand, and so if we can just get that, it would be great. Things that my solutions will not address: labor displacement. This isn't going to save jobs. Intentional harm caused by users. If someone says, yes, but I want you to kill the humans and turn them into paper clips, because I just like love that idea, it won't stop that. If someone is trying to do CBNR risks, it's still going to happen. This is not a solution to everything that AI can happen. But what it can do is if the bot goes and checks the market price and realizes there's some huge discrepancy there, it may be able to send up a red flag and say, hey, there might be something bad going on here. Which if we have a system that looks for red flags, maybe that would be useful. It's not going to stop large-scale political or societal manipulation, or the bots kind of swinging our preferences towards a certain direction through, I don't know, bringing up YouTube shows that tell us how wonderful it is to be a paperclip. All right, but it supports pluralism, and so it would at least make it more difficult for those types of attacks to work. All right, so my policy suggestions: be pro-competition, not pro-business. So support open source, and I mean this like broadly, so not just like, hey, open source is a good thing, but when you make a policies prescription, say, will this allow open source to continue to exist, or would that collapse it? Because if we collapse it into just a couple of competitors, a lot of these solutions go away. Strong antitrust monitoring and enforcement and data portability, I think, would be really important, because I don't want to get locked into a model. All right, I know that that's been very difficult in many of your fields, so I just apologize for touching those wounds. And then developers, system prompts for agentic systems may benefit by checking price signals. We mentioned that already. And that is it for me. Thanks.